Hi, Trey Mitchell with Creative Sound Solutions today. I want to give you a quick overview of basic compressor settings, give you a quick rundown here of how we'll set it up, get it in line for you. Basic compressor settings, or basic setup, generally you have a stereo unit, a left and a right, or two monos. The basic function of this is to take your output of your board and keep it at a level output. The main use, you can insert to drum subs, vocal subs, output compression. Again, the main thing is if you have a very loud difference in your low volume, your high volume, this will basically level your mix out. This is a fairly inexpensive compressor here. Basically, you would input and output on the back through an insert point of the board. So you'll have a 1/4 inch tip ring sleeve going to a input and an output, a send and a return. That is inserted to the main channel, both sides. Then the unit is set up so that the ratio, the first two things you'll see here is a threshold and a ratio. These are your main concerns in the fact that this adjusts the actual level of the compressor. The threshold, you have an LED output on your board. The threshold is the set of when the compressor starts working. At 0 dB, when your board reaches unity, this compressor would start working depending on where your threshold here is set. Right now I'm set at unity at 0, so when the board outputs 0, anything above it, the compressor will catch and reduce. The ratio tells how much of a reduction. Basically at a 3-to-1 setting, the fact of the matter is you'll have to have an increase of 3 dB to get 1 decibel of output out of the compressor. So when you input this on the mains, if you have a 3 dB jump in your volume, you're only going to get 1 dB out of the compressor, so the compressor is going to squash it. You don't want to over compress. You don't want to use ratios above 6-to-1 basically on most anything unless you're doing limiting function, meaning keeping the signal hard and not letting it go above that. Basic compressor settings allow it to breathe and not jump really high. You have an attack and release setting after the ratio. This is how quick, on the attack rather, it picks up. The release is how long will the compressors take to resume its normal function after you hit the input level. The output master volume is for however much reduction you have coming in. Say you're reducing 3 dB of gain reduction, the output will then take it up 3 dB, so that even though it pumps wide, you're going to compress it down and then you're going to raise the overall level back to what you were coming into it with. So whatever's reduced is raised back, but it's kept in a compressed level. Basically on this first section here, when you wire in your left and right, a good start setting is 0 at the threshold, 3-to-1 to 4-to-1 on your ratio on the output. I generally like 3-to-1, 4-to-1 on a heavy band. The attack release, you want to stay somewhere around between 2 and 6 milliseconds on the attack. The release, roughly 500 milliseconds. You'll want to play with that. You don't want to leave the release too long, because then when the next signal comes in above the threshold, the compressor won't be back to its starting point yet. At the output, however much is being reduced on your gain reduction on this side, you'll see a meter here, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're coming down to 3 to 6 on your output, that means you'll come over here and go 3 to 6 on the 3 to 6 on the reduction, you'll come 3 to 6 on the output. Basically that's a very basic setup for starting any compression on a system. Then the threshold will then affect when the compressor starts working. If you're not pumping a lot out of the board to unity, back it down a little bit and you'll see your reduction start to happen here. You'll have input going across, and when you reach the threshold level, it'll start reducing here. So you'll go up, then you'll come back. However far you're coming back is how much you're reducing the signal out, and you adjust for that here. Okay, basically next you'll have, most compressors have the same settings. You have a peak and an RMS, which is, you're metering the peak signal or the RMS signal. Generally I'd leave it at RMS, which is continuous. Hard-knee and soft-knee. This affects hard-knee when you set a ratio and the compressor starts working. Hard-knee, until it reaches say 0 dB, where our setting is now, it immediately starts working when it reaches 0. If you're in soft knee, roughly 10 decibels before 0 dB, the compressor will apply a very light ratio. And then as you get closer to your threshold of unity, as you work up to 0 here, your ratio will increase until when you finally hit 0, the full effect of the compressor is working. Again, hard knee, it works to 0, boom, the compressor starts working. Soft knee is when it works in and starts gradually compressing up to the point of 0. It gives you a little smoother. You have to be careful though on soft knee that you don't get mushy, because you can hit the soft knee and totally affect the vocals and make them mush up if you're not careful. The next section on there would be the gate section. Basically, you have a threshold and a rate. The threshold again is when does the gate start working. The times you would use this are kind of limited on a main system. It's generally used if you have a kick drum, a snare drum, some microphone that needs to be shut off on an individual. The last control here on the front, basically the left and the right, or channel 1 and channel 2, are exactly the same controls. There is one function in the middle here. Say you're compressing a stereo keyboard. There's a stereo link function which actually defaults to channel 1 control. Channel 2 is actually non-functioning now. The internal workings, every setting is controlled by the channel 1 side. So whenever the compression starts to work here, it starts to work here at the same time. A lot of times though, on stereo systems, if you have separate program material in left and right, you don't want this pushed. If you are running a straight mono system through left and right, push this and then the compression will happen both sides. You only have to worry about one controller side. Your basic cable we'll be using to hook up, that's a 1/4 inch insert cable. Basically it breaks down a 1/4 inch jack, which allows you to insert into the signal chain, leave the board, and come back to the board at the beginning of the signal chain. This is allowed through the tip and the sleeve, the ring and the sleeve. That breaks down to the tip as a send, the ring as a return. What that means is as you input to the board, the tip or the send to the input, the ring or the return from the output. So what it happens, I'm going to the board now, when you insert to the channel in, you now are sending that signal through the tip send, and it's going to come back through the return ring. So you're coming out through the unit, from the unit back to the board. So basically, output is the ring, the tip or the send is the input. So after having seen how it's inserted, basically you'll see me talk now. Nothing's happening until I get to 0. 1, when I reach 0, the compressor will start to knock down. So basically right about now, 2, 1, I raise my ratio, nothing happens. I lower it, look at that. Now I'm at -10, meaning when this signal reaches here, I'll start my compression, and as my input gets to 10 and goes above, this is knocking way down. I'm getting 8 dB of reduction roughly down here. That would mean I need to output back up to about 8. So I'm going in, I'm reducing -8 almost on my maxes, and I'm bumping it and making up the gain here. So 1, 2. If your units, if the signal is at unity right now, nothing's happening until I get right at 0. 1, 1, 2. So that's how you'll adjust your signal here, but ratio based on your input signal. Now I've got pretty heavy compression, which that's too much compression basically for an output, so you need to be really careful not to over compress. Whatever you're compressing, again, make it up on the output. This is a quick, simple, basic setup. It doesn't cover everything, but it'll get you in the ballpark and get you started. Any other questions, please come to the website at www.creativesoundsolution.com. Also, the telephone number to contact us directly, 239-458-3408. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.